Coming up next on The Health Hustle.
And the big question was this, is at that age, and I was 37, could I actually change a full career and go into something brand new that I've never done before, right? And that was the fear, is I was making good money, I was driving a nice car, I was living in a nice place. I had to give all that up for an unknown future, right? That I didn't even know what I was going to do within the field, right? I just had to pick a field. It felt like I was on the edge of a cliff and I had to jump. And I didn't know where I was going. I'm like, fuck. That was probably the most nerve-wracking year of my life, is one, deciding what I was going to do, and then within that field what I was going to do, and then when it was time to quit the job, right? And just the quitting the job was like, had tied me up in a bunch of nerves, dude. It was so hard. It took like 3 Tony Robbins conferences for me to say, okay, I am unshackled from these chains. I'm going to quit.
Hey folks, and welcome to the Health Hustle of Austin, Texas. On this show, we uncover the big ideas from your fellow health and fitness entrepreneurs in the Austin, Texas area about how they built their business and the lessons they learned along the way. What's up, y'all? Corey here, and on this episode, I had a chance to sit down with Faraz Khan, who might just be related to Genghis Khan. Who knows? He's a former computer scientist turned longevity educator, speaker, and biohacker. He turned from helping large media, life science, and pharma companies to helping everyday people beat back the scourge of aging. I'll be honest, when I read this bio, I was like, what is a scourge? And I actually went and looked it up, and it's basically just something that causes extreme trouble or suffering. And so, I don't know, I just thought that was a great word. I don't use it often, so I think I'm going to use that word a little bit more often. So he also has his own podcast show. It's called Anti-Aging Hacks. In 2009, where he interviews the top minds in longevity, anti-aging, and health industry. He is the founder of Fully Vital, a company that specializes in hair wellness using natural products. And some of the things that we get into on this episode are what it was like growing up in India with overprotective parents, the differences in mentality of being a landowner. That was actually really interesting to me. I didn't realize how important that is in other countries compared to here. I don't actually think twice about it. The biggest lessons he learned from being a consultant, why networking is so important. The moment that he left corporate America, that was a fun story. Finding his passion, keyword is finding. The sacrifices he made to start his own business, finding clarity, the power of content and content marketing, an interesting conversation about living forever, if we do or do not want to live forever, his best advice on mentorship, and so much more. One last thing, if you're a health or fitness professional and you're having difficulties getting leads, I have a free 7-step process that walks you through how to convert your social media following to paying clients. You can find the link to it in the description of this episode. Without further ado, let's go. Faraz Khan, welcome to the show, brother. How you doing?
Thank you, Corey. Appreciate it, brother. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm great, man. We got connected through our local podcast squad meetup group, which is kind of going to be more or less a monthly meetup thing. And so, fellow podcaster, it's always fun to have other people that know how to run a podcast on a show, because you're no stranger to a microphone, which is way fun.
Totally. And I'm excited to be here with you and spend more time with you this year.
Cool. So we're going to tell your story because it's not really out there. And so we're going to explore it. And so this show is really more or less just about kind of your entrepreneurship journey. And so a great starting place, I feel like, would be somewhere in the aspect of like you growing up in India and getting a degree in electrical engineering, correct? Mm-hmm. What was that experience like? I mean, growing up in India and going to school and all the aspects of that. I know nothing about India, to be honest.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, it was like normal from my standpoint. I think what's different about Indian education is that your parents, your society, your friends, everybody's so worried about getting good grades. It's all about getting good grades. High school is not about getting laid. It's not about finding a date to prom. Like none of that stuff. You just work and you study, because college, it's hard to get into if you're especially going for a technical degree. It's pretty hard. So high school was, I think, my favorite time ever, because I was an athlete and a soccer athlete. And so I went into a boarding school and I was so homesick, man, because all the kids knew each other and I was new and I was completely homesick. I didn't know anybody and I just felt left out and was crying every night. And then 2 months in, I somehow got looped in to play soccer with the seniors. And the first day I played, they were like, "Who are you? You need to come play with us every day." And so that changed my whole trajectory from like being this sad, lonely kid to being like the popular guy. Because imagine you're standing in line for lunch and all the seniors, when you're like a freshman, all the seniors are like high-fiving you. Your friends are like, "What? Who are you, dude?
You're the cool kid now."
You're the cool kid. And so suddenly all the women are, looking at me more. And so high school was probably my favorite time ever. And then I did college, got my engineering degree, electrical engineering degree in Mumbai. That was fun. It was just a little bit more of a grind because it's such a big city and the wealth disparities are so obvious. Like either you're there or you're not, right? It's like shit. So that gave me some more context on what the real world's like after high school.
Did you have much money growing up?
We were like middle class. We didn't have a lot of money, but
What did your parents do?
my dad was also an engineer, mechanical engineer.
Okay.
But they lived in a different town. So when I was in Mumbai in college, they sent me a monthly stipend, and that's all I had. Like I couldn't like go crazy, because I didn't have a credit card. Like money would come into my bank, and I had a debit card, and that's all I could use. So I had to be careful. But I had friends that were just spending like crazy because their family, they came from wealth, and so it was a sobering experience for me to see like that there's so much more out there that we didn't have. And so that I think I had a little bit of a complex in college. I'm like, man, I'm not enough. My family doesn't have enough money. I don't have enough money. So after high school, it was such a letdown, right? And then after that, I came to the United States to get my master's in computer science, which was awesome because the minute I landed, I got a taxi to my university, and there's Harley Davidson motorcycles, 9 of them right beside me. I'm like, fuck yeah.
America.
That was pretty wild. I was like, yeah, this is so cool.
Where's the bald eagle? No.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. And then I getting a master's in computer science, dude, it's like you're working day in and day out. Like I was at the lab every day. Saturday nights, I was at the lab working, So it was a good experience. Learned a lot of skills, made some cool friends, and then moved to Denver and to get a job.
Pause. Okay, so we'll get back to that, but I want to circle back on a couple of things. One, I got to tell you this great story about a buddy of mine here in Austin who I met, he's also from India, and his first name is Johnson. And he told me that the reason that his first name is Johnson is because his parents wanted to name him the most like American name that they could possibly name him, so that when he wanted to come over to the States, like it'd be like just a shoe-in. But they didn't realize that like Johnson's typically a last name. But it worked because he's here in Austin. He's great. I think he's actually like a computer engineer or something. Not shocking.
Wow. Like I know that in China, everybody has an American name and then a Chinese name. But I've never heard that about Indian parents like planning so far ahead that my kid's going to be in America or in the West, and therefore he must have a good name.
Because you could come here for school. That must have been the reason I'm taking it?
Yeah, okay. I came here for grad school.
Okay. And then that just allows you a green card or something to be able to come to the States?
No. So with grad school, after you finish, or with, I believe, any school, you get 2 years. It's called the period of OPT, I think optional practical training, where you can spend those 2 years working for an American company before you go back home. Or if they get a visa for you, if they file for a visa, meaning they want to keep you around for longer, then they can file for that visa, and then you can work under that visa for that company.
And what did you do?
I did technology, so I was coding.
Okay.
I was writing code back in the day. So yeah, so a company sponsored my visa, and so I could stay here and code some more.
How did you officially become a citizen then?
Man, that is a long story.
Did I open a can of worms? Sorry.
That's a can of worms, but I'm glad you opened it because there are some countries where the visa is so oversubscribed, like name Mexico, China, India, where a lot of nationals from that country are here or want to be here. So the line is super long, and there's a quota. Every year, you can only have so many people from this country, from all these countries, right? So the quota for India is very backlogged. And so it took me 17 years after I got a visa to get a green card. Not a citizenship, a green card. And you have to like stay within the confines of that visa. You can't move up in your profession. You can't become a boss. You have to do what you're doing. You have to stay in that context of like coding.
For 17 years?
Yeah.
Damn.
It's wild.
Is that what you did then? So you did that for 17 years just to be able to become a U.S. citizen?
Yeah. I mean, legally, that's what you have to do. So I stayed in the profession, peripherally in the profession for 15, 16 years. And then, of course, I started doing this and a little bit more of something else. But as long as that was part of the job description, it had to be.
Okay.
I had to do it.
Dang. Okay. So grew up in India, eventually came over to New York to pursue your graduate level studies, graduated, started doing some coding, and then eventually found your way in Denver.
Yeah.
What's the reason and what happened there?
So after you finish grad school or any school in upstate New York, everybody wants to move to the city. The city meaning New York City, right? And so that's what I thought I'd do. And I was talking to a couple of big banks like Citibank and some others to go work for them. And then a friend of mine said, hey, he was a year ahead of me. He said, hey, my company's hiring and they're smaller, so you're going to learn more. You should come to Denver. It's a great city. You love sports and you're athletic. This is all about the outdoors. And so I went there for an interview. They flew me out just for an interview. I said, free ticket, I'll take it.
For sure.
So I go there. On the way back, when I got back to Rochester, I had a voicemail from a buddy saying that, hey, you got the job. And I'm like, shit. Now I got to think about it. Now I seriously got to consider this, right?
Yeah, you just wanted the trip. And
wanted the trip. And now I'm like, but I wanted to go to New York City. So I ended up taking the offer and moved to Denver and had fun there.
How long were you in Denver?
9 years.
And you were doing what at this point? Coding?
I was doing coding, yeah.
9 years, okay. And were you still playing soccer at this point? You said you were into sports. Was the appeal of coming to Denver?
It was, yeah. So Denver, I heard, everybody was super outdoorsy. So I played soccer still, which I loved. I played it my whole life. And then I started playing kickball, and I started playing dodgeball, and I started skiing and snowboarding and whitewater rafting and climbing mountains and everything that Colorado offers. I became Mr. Outdoorsy. And so that was really fun.
So I don't know if we're at that point of this story yet, but something I want to just ask now so I don't forget is like coming from India to America, have you noticed a difference in just like mentalities in regards to like what you do, your work ethic, like your appreciation, I guess, just overall of like just being here compared to, I guess, an average American?
Yeah. I think that when I came here, it was almost 20 years ago. America's changed so much since then, right? Because now we talk about gratitude and we talk about spiritual growth. Like that wasn't a topic 20 years ago. But even so, I think that what I noticed is that the people were so much more open here. They're open of new cultures. They're open for new ideas. It's just this openness that's not prevalent in other parts of the world. And then just the deep focus that people have, just like going really deep on something and spending their decades working on that. In my family, we didn't have a lot of professionals. We had people that owned land, right? And so they employed farmers to grow crops and whatnot, but they were landowners, and like that was the status. Like, how much land do you own? So
Interesting.
Yeah. So when I was growing up, I didn't see a lot of professionals. I didn't see a lot of people like, working in a field and creating big inventions and getting Nobel Prizes and whatnot. But when you come to America, you're like, holy shit, there is so much innovation happening here. There's Silicon Valley. There's scientists, researchers, experts, buildings, real stuff. It was really cool to see the difference in society. And that really explains why America is a superpower.
I've heard the same thing about China as well in regards to like owning land. I've heard about how like they just buy a ton of real estate in this country because there is some degree of like, I think there's obviously the wealth aspect of it, of like it helps you to just like gain long-term generational wealth. But I wonder if it's also like a cultural thing as well of like, I didn't realize India had this like a cultural norm of like owning land is like some sort of status figure.
Yeah, I think in the second tier cities, totally. Like in Mumbai or Delhi, if you go there, it's like New York. Like you can't own land; it's just too expensive, right? But in second tier cities, especially when land was handed down from your grandparents and great grandparents, and there was a lot of it, like thousands of acres, right? Like too much land. Of course, it got broken up as it got divided into sons and daughters and inheritance and whatnot. But still, it's a status even now. It's like, how much land do you have?
Because there's so much land that's owned in Texas as well, where we are, obviously, right? Is like, that's a huge deal here. Is like, I can't remember the exact percentage, but it's like a micro fraction of land here is actually like private or public. The majority of it is all private. But I've never associated with like, I've never met somebody been like, how much land do you have? Like, cool. How many cows do you have? Like, I've never even thought twice about it.
Yeah, it's not a thing.
No.
Yeah.
Interesting.
When there's new wealth, when there's different ways of creating wealth, you don't even think about it. But when wealth is associated with land or like hard cost, like a factory, then you got to think about it that way, right? It's just a different paradigm to look at status even.
Yeah. So you eventually found your way to California after spending some time out in Denver. Yeah. What was the initiative there, and like, where did you go? What did you do? Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So after Denver, which I was doing a lot of stuff in, very outdoorsy, I just had this knowing that I wanted to do something bigger. I wanted to be around people that were flying higher, like the Eagles, right? Where are they?
America.
America. That's why I'm here. And so I couldn't. There were, of course, some in Denver, but it was more a second-tier city, I think. And there weren't a lot of flat. There were no Lamborghinis driving down, downtown, and not ostentatious displays of wealth. And so I said, okay, I want to do bigger things in life. Where can I be around people that are going to push me? I was trying to go back to New York. So I was trying to apply to jobs, man. I spent a year applying to 3 or 4 jobs, and it never worked out. And for some reason I said, maybe LA might be okay. And in 2 weeks, I had an interview and an offer. I was like, wow, maybe it's meant to be at a bigger consulting firm, which worked right with my goals. So like the doors open, the stars aligned, and in a month or 2, I was in LA.
Doing consulting?
Yeah. So I was doing more technology consulting in Denver. Then I started doing technology consulting in LA and also business consulting slowly. So now I was doing both in Los Angeles.
As a obviously entrepreneur and business owner now, what could you teach others, or what did you learn maybe from just like consulting in general? Like how did that carry over from, I think you said you did it for like 20 years or something like that?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
What did that carry over to into what you're doing now?
Totally. I think the 2 things that consulting taught me, or many things, but one of them was seeing how different companies do things, how they build technology and how they build systems and how they add value to the world. Because in consulting, every 3 to 6 months, you're a new client and you're talking to new people. And so you're having new conversations of how to add value to their business. And so learning about different businesses was really cool. And the second piece that's really important about consulting is the client always comes first. Right? So you have to be customer centric all the time. If the client says one bad thing about you, it's really bad, right? Because what consulting firms want to do is they want to send you to a client who loves you so much, hopefully, that they never want to let you go. And then you can get in there and like build a team around you. And so that's how they grow, is like personality is very important. And so those 2 key concepts have followed me since. And now like every day I think about how can I serve my customers better? How can I improve my product? Every day I ask myself that question 50 times. How can I improve my product? How can I serve my customers better? So that's been ingrained in me from the consulting days. And just being so polite and just, yes, what do you need? How can we help, right? It's not, hey, it's your problem. No. It's like, how can we help you? What do you need?
That's a good thing to obsess over, honestly, is like the obsession over how can I just provide better service, add more value, have a better product, have a better relationship with this person, essentially. In regards to like consulting, how much of that aspect is like sales and marketing? Like, is that a big part of what you were doing as a consulting?
Totally. So in the beginning, it wasn't so much because I was lower down in the hierarchy. But in Los Angeles, I was working with big tech firms like AT&T, and my job towards the end was being at the Warner Bros. Lot. I was on the lot every single day, and my job was to bump into directors and VPs and say, hey, I just came from AT&T. They're buying you. I've got some things to tell you about it. They're like, what? You know things? I'm like, yeah, of course. I was in strategy meetings over there. They're like, okay, let's go to lunch. So go to lunch or dinner, and like I'd build a relationship. And I'd tell them, hey, listen, I know you hire a lot of Deloitte or EY, Ernst & Young, and PwC consultants. We have the similar consultant. We actually hire from them. So we have the same quality of consultant, but they're all local. They go to the same grocery stores that you do. We contribute to the same charities. So hire us because you also get a discount and we're local. We're not going to leave you on Thursday afternoon. So that was the whole pitch, right? And of course, personality and sales skills and all of that. So I loved it, man. I loved the portions of it where I would close like a $500,000 deal or $1 million deal. And I was like, yeah, that was amazing because I built a relationship, right? But like day 3, I was like, back to work. I don't love it. So
what would you tell others maybe in the regards of just networking in all the years that you've had a profession, been in the career, now officially obviously doing a lot of your own thing? Like what degree of the energy and effort do you put into networking? And like what would you maybe recommend to others of like good mindsets around that aspect of it?
What a great question, Corey.
Thanks.
This is a critical question that I have learned this lesson over and over, and I'm still ignoring it in some part. I think that more important than your business and, if everything is, if all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, like the people are the most important asset that you have internally and also externally. One handshake and one meeting and one relationship can take you further in a month than you could go by yourself in a year in some cases. And when the higher you go in entrepreneurship, the more it becomes about relationships. And who do you know? Just today, I was on a podcast recently about a hair wellness product, which we make hair wellness products, and somebody learned about me through a podcast. They tried it on. This morning, I got a before and after picture. They're like, oh my God, I love this. 2 women that I know, we're common friends, connected me to this gal. She's like, come on my podcast. And she's got a huge following. I'm like, here you go. It's all about people, the higher up you go. So if you're listening to this, pay attention. There's one thing I would say. Yes, build your business, get the skills, learn sales and marketing, but also focus on people. And Russell Brunson and some of these marketers talk about the Dream 100. Who are your 100 people that if they were in your camp and they were promoting you, the sky would be the limit for you. Start building those relationships.
I love that. I totally prescribe to that aspect of like the Dream 100. So it's funny that you say that. I actually literally have like an Airtable. It's basically like an Excel sheet, if you know what I'm talking about, where I have that list. It's probably well over 100 at this point. Sure. I'm sure a lot of people are. But like just keeping intention around the people that you really want to connect with at a high level. And I don't look at it as like, I think a lot of people might see that as like salesy or slimy or something like that. But at the end of the day, it's like, no, these are people that I genuinely want to help and serve. That's why they're on my list, because like they're people I want to be connected with. They're people I like. They're people I want to spend time with and have conversations and bring on the podcast show and serve them from a marketing standpoint. So I totally agree. I had a mentor actually tell me a while ago, and I carry this so deeply with me. And he said that money monetizes once, but skills and relationships monetize forever. I think about that on a daily basis.
Wow,
and
I
so
love that.
So the majority of my energy is put towards those 2 things, is like skills and relationships. Those are the longest term investments you can possibly make in anything you're doing, whether that's like a business or just like your personal health and well-being or like just like your community or whatever it is like, I think about those aspects a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, man. So how was California then? You were there for 6 years, if I remember correctly. Like, what was your experience there? And like, was this then now the tipping point for how you decided to kind of step away from the corporate world of consulting and like start doing your own thing? Is that where it showed up?
Yeah, totally. And before I go to California, by the way, you're very genuine. So you talk about your Dream 100 and building relationships. Yeah, you ooze being genuine. So I think that's great, man. That's a very important characteristic to have, because people can sense if you're not being genuine.
Thanks, man.
And they run the other way. Coming back to California. Yeah, so this is where now I was looking for who are the high flyers, the high rollers. Oh my goodness, talk about high rollers. They're everywhere. They're in your face. You wake up in the morning, they're there. In the evening at 2 a.m., they're there. You see it, the ostentatious displays of wealth everywhere, right? And so that was a great wake-up call. I was like, oh man, these people are playing the game at a much higher level. Cool. And so I was working with the consulting firm and going to a lot of companies and helping them. At the same time, I had this gnawing feeling, and this was getting louder. This voice was getting louder, that there's something else for me. I need to do something for myself. This is not my path. Because this path would be just grinding away for the next 20 years at a consulting job. And with consulting, it's hard work. The emails would start at 6 a.m. and they would stop at 8 p.m.
Ooh.
So you're technically like all of your energy is stuck on work. You can't think. You can't do anything else, right? So I just knew that I had to do something else. And so I was telling you this briefly. When towards the end of California, when I was finally figured out how to live the good life with the resources that I had and found the right friends to have the fun experiences that we did, I started seeing on Instagram these young kids, 25, 26 years old. They're like, oh, check out my Lambo behind me. I go, surely that's fake. Like Ty Lopez, as you mentioned, started this early on, but a lot of other entrepreneurs were like, oh, check out my Lambo, check out this car, check out my G-Wagon. I'm like, this can't be true. They're too young. They don't know anything about life, Here I am. I've spent all this time. I have this corporate job. I know more. And I was like, do I really? Do I really know more? Is there some truth? Is there truth? Do they actually have that car? If they do, what are they doing? What's the line of business that they're in? Because in my line of business, it's going to take a long time, right? So I started researching, and then I found digital marketing, online marketing as an engine that's really helping people grow, if that's your passion. And so then I had to spend some time. And this was probably the hardest period of my life of of questioning everything, because I was trying to figure out, what am I passionate about? I'm not going to do anything ever again that I'm not passionate about. So how do I find my passion? That took over a year.
That's good framing for a lot of people, is that I think people think it just like shows up on their doorstep. What is the process that you maybe went through to kind of like figure that out? You said that it took a year. I know for my own process, it was like, I think it was kind of like trial by fire. I think I was, as Matthew McConaughey would say, which I love Matthew McConaughey, he basically says like, we're really bad at knowing what we want, but we're really good at knowing what we don't want, which is like so much of like how we figure out how we like anything in life, whether it's the food we like to eat or the people we want to date or essentially the career we want to go. How did you figure it out?
Yeah, totally. I just knew this thing, that I wanted to be at the forefront of whatever was coming. And I said, what are the key technologies that are going to change the world as we know it? So there's a list of 9 or 10 on my board, and I can count some of them. There was blockchain that was blowing up back then. There were sensors, there was 3D printing, there was AI, there was artificial intelligence, not artificial intelligence, but augmented reality, virtual reality, like you name it, and then longevity, right? So I'm looking at this going, can I make like the smallest difference in any of these? And am I passionate about them? So those were the 2 questions I was asking. And for a lot of these fields, from making a difference was very hard, because AI has been around for 30 years. People are just now seeing it, but it's been in progress since the 80s, right? So I'm like, that's far gone. And then blockchain, I just wasn't feeling the vibe. I just didn't think I wanted to do that, even though I want to invest in it, but not build on it. And then I looked at all of these one by one. I said, can I make a difference, and am I passionate? And when I got to longevity, I said, I'm certainly passionate. I want to stay young for a long time. And this is going to change, everything about how we think we grow old, and the rejuvenation of the body and everything. And then I said, can I make the smallest difference? I was like, I don't know, but I think I have a chance, right? So it was like 1.5, right? Instead of like 0 or 1 for the rest. And so then I didn't know what to do, right? So I listened to so many podcasts and listened to all these philosophers and people. And the big question was this, is at that age, and I was 37, could I actually change a full career and go into something brand new that I've never done before, right? And that was the fear, is I was making good money. I was driving a nice car. I was living in a nice place. I had to give all that up for an unknown future, right? That I didn't even know what I was going to do within the field, right? I just had to pick a field. It felt like I was on the edge of a cliff and I had to jump. And I didn't know where I was going. I'm like, fuck. So I'm sorry if I'm cussing, but...
You're good.
But that was probably the most nerve-wracking year of my life, is one, deciding what I was going to do, and then within that field, what I was going to do, and then when it was time to quit the job, right? And just the quitting the job was like, had tied me up in a bunch of nerves, dude. It was so hard. It took like 3 Tony Robbins conferences for me to say, okay, I am unshackled from these chains. I'm going to quit.
Dude, we need those breaking moments, man. Of like, for me personally, it was one when I read a book called Choose Yourself by James Altucher. Other people probably heard me talk about this, but like that was the book that changed my life fundamentally. I was at that breaking point as well. I was still working in healthcare as an occupational therapist, and I was just like, I was miserable, man. Like I was so just like burnt out. I knew it wasn't where I wanted to be. And honestly, I started to realize too, and this is like a tip for anybody, is that I started to realize that like I was actually doing people a disservice by having a job that I wasn't really excited about, when there was other people that would have loved to step in and fill my role and like to serve people at a higher level. Like that was a big eye opener for me. As what you said something earlier about like, you knew you could make a difference and you were passionate about the longevity thing. What was it about that stood out to you? Like, why were you excited about that?
Yeah. So great question. My parents live in India, and so I go see them every year, maybe a year and a half. Sometimes they come here. But every time I see them, they have more wrinkles. They're complaining of aches and pains, and I'm getting the guilt trip from my mother. Like, why or don't you spend more time with us? What's the point of life? What are we doing here? Is it all about money? Look at you. Like the guilt trip, man.
Oh my gosh.
And so when I'm home, and even sometimes when I'm not home, I'm thinking about, okay, what can I do to rejuvenate their bodies and keep them young so we can have experiences together, right? And so as part of that, I took them on a surprise trip to Europe in 2017. We went to 6 countries in 1 month. And that was the happiest 1 month of my life because I was looking at the world through their eyes for the first time, right? Because I'd been all over Europe and stuff. And so coming back to how can I help my parents? And yes, selfishly, I want to be young too, but it was more about that, right? And Indian families were very, very close. Like if you are if you live in the same city, your parents expect you to live with them. It's not like, hey, you're 18, get out of here. It's more like, no, come live with us. We love you. You're a kid. Like, come here. And so it came from that. It came from trying to help my parents and trying to help me as well. And so that was the double reason for choosing longevity. And I was passionate too. And I'd worked out my whole life, and I was into health and wellness and running and whatnot. And so I thought that was it. And I didn't know what I was going to do, but I said, the best way to learn the industry is to start a podcast so you can have a bunch of people on the show and get a very broad perspective. And then you figure out what you want to do. And maybe one of the guests is so inspiring that you can partner with them on some solution. And maybe that's the doctor, and here you are doing all the menial work, so to speak, building the business together. So that's how I thought about it to get into this field.
Is that how it played out then? By starting the podcast, was that like essentially gave you the information you needed to kind of figure out what direction with you wanted to go? Also too, side note, I just want to ping this real quick. Were you like the black sheep then for like the guy that like left home and didn't stay at home in India? Did they kind of shame you for that?
I mean, it's cool to go to America, but yes, I left the family. And then when I left the profession, oh my God, man, my parents were like, no, you're not leaving. Stick with your job. Like, this is not cool. After my third Tony Robbins event with Date with Destiny, I was like, yes, I'm done. And I called my mom the next day. She goes, no, don't leave. I'm like, oh my God, I just spent $6,000 for that 6-day event. And now, like, thanks for, blowing up my balloon here.
I'm going to pause you for 1 second because there's a great comedian. I think his name's Jimmy Yang, I think it is. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Mm-mm.
He's from, I think it's China. I don't remember exactly. But he was talking about how when he decided to come over to America and he wanted to pursue his passion of being a comedian, and he was telling his dad about it. And his dad was like, you're going to do what? He's like, yeah, I want to pursue my passion. Like, I'm really excited about this like thing of like comedy. And his dad was basically like, no, like you do what you hate for money and then you go pursue the other things that you want to do. And he's like, no, man, I'm going to try to like make money on it. And his dad's like, no, like don't do that.
Totally.
I'm sure you live the same thing.
Totally.
But, yeah.
That complete opposition, right?
Yeah.
But I decided to do it anyway, man, because I didn't want to blame them when I was 80. So yeah, that's what I did. I chose my profession. I went in, and with the podcast, to your question, it gave me so much insight, and I talked to so many people. And plus, when I decided 6 months in, I asked myself this question. Okay, cool. I'm doing this, but what are my challenges? What are my personal challenges in life that maybe this new field can help me in? And the first one, obviously, that I've been so insecure about my whole life was my hair or my hair loss. And so I decided that I'll go explore. And luckily, 4 days after I made that decision, there was a conference in Thailand that was an international conference with hair transplant surgeons and stem cell experts, and it was all about hair restoration naturally and using surgery. So I emailed here's the good thing about having a podcast. I emailed the organizers. They're like, oh, we're getting on a flight to Thailand. I'm like, hey, can I come attend? They're like, yeah, sure, we'll give you a ticket. So you get a free ticket to events, right? To health events.
So like a media ticket or something like that?
Yeah, like a media ticket.
Yeah.
And I bought a plane ticket on points and got on a plane 2 days later to go to Thailand. And then my friends were like, oh man, did you have fun in Thailand? I'm like, no, I didn't go out one night. I had a mission. I had no money coming in. So 6 months in, I was stressed, right? I didn't party. I spent 4 or 5 days speaking, like, listening, learning, taking notes, understanding everything about the field of hair loss. Then when I came back, I visited each of these doctors individually. I went to their office. I'm like, hey, I met you in Thailand. I want to come by with a camera crew and record a podcast with you guys. They're like, sure, free marketing. Come on in.
Definitely.
So went in there, spent hours with each of these doctors. They took me back to the operating rooms, and they showed me surgeries that were going on. They showed me stem cells and PRP that was getting injected. And so I got a really firsthand knowledge. And then I spent all this time hanging out with them and interviewing them too. And then I came back and I said, okay, that's still not enough. I went through and read hundreds of research papers on hair thinning and hair loss and the reasons for men and women. And then after 3 or 4 months of that, I said, I think that we can add value to the market, because hair, if you can add value, you get paid. I think we can add value, and here's what we need to do to add value, and here's how it's different. And so that was the proposition I came up with. And then we got into creating physical products, which was a whole different beast. But that was how we got into what I'm doing now.
So did you start as a service or a product?
Okay. This is also a pivot that I had to do. Is I started as a service.
Okay.
I was in the, the online marketing, like expert world where you sell information.
Sure.
Which is a lot of coaches are doing now, right? Online course. I thought that was the way. So I created an online course for hair rejuvenation. And the question I got over and over after people like, okay, cool, thanks for giving me the information. Now what product do I buy? I'm like, okay, like so go get this from here, go get this from here, go get this from here. And they're like, cool, thanks. And then they were gone. I'd never heard from them again. I go, or like they'd email me like, wow, my hair's coming back, or this is good and that's good and this I didn't like and I got allergies from this. And I'm going, I can't actually make any real money unless I'm building products. And so that was the pivot where we decided that I had to really explore these products. And so that's another few months of like really deep exploration and finding out the differentiator in the market and the value. And then after I decided, it took another year to bring him to market, which it's a whole different ballgame, right? You got to get the formulations right. You got to get the serums right. You got to find and interview manufacturers and formulators. And so it's been a long journey, and there's a lot of lessons that I've learned. And yeah, but I feel truly fulfilled that I've come this far, and there's so many things I've had to cross, right? And that's the journey, man, with entrepreneurship. And you know this.
No, I totally do. I remember the first moment for me, I'll never forget it. I met a guy who basically, he drove what was like, you'd consider like a Zamboni for potholes. I grew up in Minnesota where like it's cold and you have potholes every year because of the ground breaks. And I remember I met a guy, and he was, I think, in his like maybe 50s, and it was his first business ever. And he said something to me that continues to stick with me, for obviously, because I'm talking about it. And he said, this is the hardest I've ever worked, but the most fulfilled by the work I've ever felt. And I remember in that moment, I was like, oh, like I want to experience that. And it took a long time to reach that point where obviously you have as well, where it's like, in the beginning, you're just like, you're so overwhelmed and confused, and you're like, do I need business cards? And like, how do I register a business? And like all these like stupid things that don't actually matter. It takes a while to get to the point where it's like, you kind of feel like you get into a groove where it's like, I have a lot of work, but at the end of the day, it's like, I kind of know where I should spend my time and energy. I don't always, because like it's easy to get distracted by the dumb stuff, but it's so fulfilling when you actually do, and you actually lean into that stuff. So now today, or I guess I should pause for a second there of, how were you able to continue to pay the bills for like, you were doing it for how long now, and then keep things going?
Yeah. So I quit my job in 2019, and luckily I had a bunch of savings and some investments that have turned out okay. By no means in the millions, not even hundreds of thousands, but I had a decent amount of savings. And I realized within 6 months that I had to cut my spending habits pretty drastically. And so I stopped doing the things I was doing and started to dissociate from the friends that I had that were all about the lifestyle and the party and the dinner, and here's what we're going to do after party. And so I started dissociating and spending the money with coaching and learning and going to conferences and just soaking up marketing every second of the day and product development. And so slowly but surely the money was, receding from my bank balance. And it is really painful when you see money going down and you're going, you can't sleep at night because you're going, holy shit, my credit cards are about maxed out. Like there's very little left in the retirement funds because those are getting drained out now. And you think about, maybe I have to work part-time because I'm not giving up on this. Maybe I have to work part-time. And so, man, there's so many thoughts, so many debilitating thoughts as you go through this process where you think the worst case is absolutely going to happen. But, the one thing I've learned, Corey, is that if you make a crazy decision that no matter what happens, this is what I'm going to pursue, man, like at the 99th second, something's going to come out of the hat. Like, there's going to be some magic comes out of the hat. You're like, wow, saved. Here's a Hail Mary that somebody caught.
I totally agree, man. A mantra I tell myself often is I can't lose if I don't quit. So like even when I know I'm in like the darkest of places and I'm just like scraping to get by and I'm like hoping to cover the bills for the week or the month or whatever it is, I just always remind myself of like, if I don't quit, I can't lose.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's always something you can figure out. I think I would always argue too, like the most important skills of every entrepreneur I've ever interviewed or ever had on the show is resourcefulness. Is like your ability to just like figure stuff out is like by far every entrepreneur's like greatest asset, I would say, is you can always figure something out. So if you were to go back to a younger version of yourself in terms of like giving him advice on what you should invest in or things you shouldn't invest in, what would you maybe tell him? Because like obviously there's a lot of things that you could do to help with increasing the income that you make in a business and a lot of things that you probably just pissed away money. Like what are the two spectrums that you see in those realms?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. When I was young, I was never fully present, because I was always dreaming up of this future scenario where I had everything I wanted and how I was not enough back in the time. And I was always dreaming of future. Even when I was with friends, I was like, okay, yeah, like, things are going to be good in the future. And so the first thing I tell them is, hey, just relax and be present. Because whatever it is, if you're going through sadness or happiness, this is the human experience. Just experience it, right? And then in terms of spending, I think what I could have done is the best tip I have, easiest tip to start a business is to work in the field that you're going to start a business in. If you're going to change your fields and then start a new business, it's like 5x harder. Easily. So if I could have worked in this industry, in the health and wellness industry for a while, that would have been fantastic. And then the second thing, the things that I would not have done is I spent way too much money on like stupid shit, like impressing people that are not even in my life anymore. Like living in a certain place in LA and having a certain car and, having a certain vibe and certain friends and going to certain places. It's irrelevant, man.
What's the most like audacious thing you spent money on that you were like, that was dumb?
Like we went to Cabo for a bachelor party and we just like went a little crazy, like table service every night and just like the bills were in the thousands.
Jesus.
And we're like, whatever, it's not a big deal. Like how bros get. That's what we're doing. And so that was just stupid because like there was no reward for all the money we spent. Like sometimes like if you get a nice car, you're like, yes, like I see it, I drive it, it feels good, even temporarily, it feels good. And like it's there, but all the money that you piss away on stupid shit, you're like, that's gone.
Yeah.
That's stupid.
Yeah, I've met some guys here in Austin that are really into the sports cars. They love it, man. Obviously you're buying a feeling, which I think that's why I buy anything at the end of the day. But yeah, I get that. So in terms of where you are now and like moving forward with your business, like how are things going today? And like, what do you kind of envision the future ahead?
Yeah, great question. We are focusing. So I got a lot more clarity, and clarity is everything, man. Because like you just mentioned this, right? In the beginning, you don't know what to do. You're like, should I print business cards? Like stupid question, right? Like stop it. But you don't know. You just need somebody to help you, guide you, coach you. And so from this, for this year, we're betting on a few channels for a business to grow. One of them is Amazon, which we feel very comfortable going into now. The other one is the affiliate channel. There's platform for this, but also just like that gal that reached out to me earlier today. She's like, hey, get on my podcast. And so I'm going to go on a ton of podcasts this year in the health and wellness space and the beauty space, especially with women's hosts, that we can talk about hair wellness for women. So that's another channel. What else? We're really going with the email and social.
Cool.
Also with social and Google advertising. We're going to spend smartly there. There's ways we've been doing that and it's okay, but I've learned of a few new techniques, which I can share later, where you can really increase or improve your return on investment.
So a lot of what you're doing essentially is just drawing attention towards the actual products that you guys are selling online at this point. That's kind of the aspect of it, like content, getting on other shows, social media, email, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's driving a lot of traffic. Constantly improving the product, which I think about all the time, but also now driving traffic and telling better stories.
That explains why we connected at the biohacking event. So that's another opportunity for you, obviously, to go out and like meet people in the industry, talk about what you're doing, get the word out, essentially.
Yeah, totally. Like I might even have a booth at one of the bigger conferences this year.
Cool.
So we're making strategic investments to raise awareness, but also get in front of people that would love to have that message on their podcast and shows.
Got to get you on some keynotes, man.
Yeah, that's the goal, bro.
Sweet. I can totally relate to like the podcasting aspect of it. I wanted to touch on this real quick of what I mean by that is that I remember when I first started my podcast show, it was the same deal. It was honestly like an opportunity to just like have conversations with interesting people that I wanted to talk to anyways. Mm-hmm. And we talked about networking earlier. It's arguably, I've yet to find a better networking tool.
Hell yes.
To be honest, is like, I feel like in a lot of ways I have access to literally almost anyone because I'm coming to them with a value add.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
And so like I can have a conversation with anyone. And then now I think you saw my post the other day about like somebody I just recently met who was like just got so much value out of the show and like how rewarding that feels to know like people listen and actually like it's helping improve their lives. Like that's the coolest feeling in the world. Mm-hmm. But in no way, shape or form did I ever plan on getting to that point where it's like grown into this thing of its own. It was honestly just started out as just me selfishly wanting to have cool conversations.
Totally.
And it's grown into this thing. Have you seen the same thing through your podcasting?
The power of having your own platform is huge. There's one thing you could do, even though it's work. Let's be honest. Podcasting is work.
It's a ton of work.
I've been doing this for years. You've been doing this for years. And so you've got to go through the pain of doing the podcasting, but the reward is so cool because I get to talk to people like you, but also people that are CEOs of big longevity firms that if I wasn't doing podcasting, I would have no shot.
Yeah. They're like, what do you want?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why are you here?
Why are you emailing us? Get out of here.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And now they're like, yeah, can I be on your show?
Yeah.
Next week is fine. Cool. Next week's fine. Like, can you hit me up when you come to LA? Let's grab lunch. I'm like, wow, this is so cool, man. You know? And so like coming back to that point, a lot of the interviews that I've done, I ask people leading questions to help improve my product, even my product. So I'm like, how would you do this? Because that's the angle we're going after for that thing. How would you do it? What else could you use? How could you improve that? And then even having conversations after the interview, I'm like, hey, here's the pathways we're going after. What would you do differently here? So and people give value freely, man. There's people that are like high up in their careers, they just want to give, right? And if you ask them the right questions, they will help you totally. So like my product line is getting constantly better because I'm bringing together the best of hair wellness and anti-aging and longevity and like all the things we talk about with sleep and stress and everything else. So I'm super excited to be in this place where we can keep changing and keep improving our products and nobody else is doing that. It gives me so much satisfaction.
I got a fun question for you because I feel like you're the person I've never been able to ask this question, but if you could live forever, would you?
No.
So somebody that's a longevity anti-aging expert and you wouldn't want to live forever?
No. The Bruce Springsteen song?
Which one?
Life goes on, even when the fun of living is gone. What's that line?
I don't know that song.
Okay. It's a famous line from I believe it's one of his songs. But I think that here's my answer to your question. As long as I am adding value or as long as I'm growing, as long as I'm enjoying myself, then sure, I want to be around. And especially if I can be in a 30-year-old body, hell yeah, right? Game on. But if I'm not happy, then what's the point of living?
Totally.
You know? So I want the option to live as long as I can, but I don't want to live forever.
I like that answer. It's something I've thought about as well. I tend to have like more of basically just like Buddhist philosophies on life. And if you were to ask a Buddhist, I feel like the answer to that question is like, you can't have one without the other, right? Like you can't enjoy life without the knowledge that you're going to die. Like as the rise and falls of the tides or the goods versus the bads or the rights versus the wrongs, like you need both. Yeah. Right. To appreciate one or the other. So like I kind of have a Buddhist. So I agree. I definitely have like a Buddhist philosophy on that as well.
So how long do you want to live?
How long do I want to live? Man, that's such a hard question because like I lost both my grandpas these last couple of years, and watching them like during their like final kind of days on this earth was like really tough because like for example, my grandpa who passed away just before COVID. Thank God, we're all grateful for. He was always the kind of guy. He went to the YMCA literally until like his like 90s. He was always very active. He would always want to mow the lawn and take care of the yard and take care of the house. And he did his entire life. And then towards the end, he literally just physically couldn't. Like, he would be out mowing the lawn and he would fall. And we were concerned about him. And he would get so frustrated because like he felt like he was losing his ability to just serve and like have a purpose on this planet and to be able to actually contribute to society in some way.
Totally.
And so when he couldn't do that anymore, it was hard to watch, right? It's like you saw him very quickly turn to this person of like, he was ready. Like, he was very ready to be done because he knew that he just no longer could physically contribute to the world.
Wow.
And so like seeing that, it's like made me wonder that question, right? Of like, well, I guess as long as, to your point, that I could continue to contribute in some way and not feel like people had to take care of me. I think that's what killed him the most, was like he reached a point where like he had to be taken care of, right?
Yeah.
And how demeaning that can be, right, on your psychology.
Totally.
So to answer your question, just like bluntly, is like, yeah, until I can't contribute anymore, I guess, whenever that is. So
That's fair.
yeah. I have a round of rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
First question: what's your best business advice?
Just stay with it. Don't quit. Keep going.
What's your best marketing advice?
Get a mentor that's doing exactly what you're doing, that's 3 to 4 years ahead of you.
Great answer. What's your favorite part about entrepreneurship?
It's the confidence, man. Like, the confidence that I had working my old job was inflated because of the money I was making from them. And then I had to hit rock bottom and rebuild myself completely. And so now I have so much confidence in myself for the first time, as opposed to, having a job or whatever.
Yeah, it's arguably one of the greatest personal development tools that I've ever found. When are you the most productive?
Morning, 7 to noon.
I'm about the same. Who is your inspiration?
Many, many people, but I would say that maybe folks like Napoleon Hill, Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins, Russell Brunson. Who else?
Napoleon Hill. I like that answer. The funny thing is, I think it was 2 interviews ago. Apparently there's information out there that supposedly like Napoleon Hill, like that book's kind of not
Fake,
true.
yeah.
Yeah. Man, that crushed my soul.
That crushes my soul.
Not that you can't take value from it and still learn the principles, and I think it's all phenomenal. But at the same time, it's kind of like, man, like that's such a classic book, up there with like As a Man Thinketh, or if you ever read that one. But
I have just listened to it 2 days ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh shit. Okay. Tell me one secret about you, or something just most people don't know about you.
I was super duper shy growing up. Super shy. Couldn't talk to anybody, especially women.
I'm still that way with women, so it's cool, man.
Okay.
What would you change about yourself?
I think what I would love to be is to be in flow state all day long.
Dude, you got to listen. I just had Corey Camp. He's a buddy of mine here in Austin. That's his whole thing, is that basically he helps people tap into their flow states and become better at like being able to click in and out of those. He used to be a high competing swimmer. And now he basically just like help other business owners like how to get into flow states. One other thing, quick tip that I'll give you, something that I recently discovered that was like, it's been a life hack for me, is generally, so you're obviously more of an early bird because you get up at probably 6 or 7. If you could jump right into work with intentions about what you're going to do, the brain waves that you experience when you're sleeping and when you're in a flow state are actually very similar. And so rolling straight out of bed into a work task that you already have pre-planned for the day can actually get you into a flow state right away.
Wow.
I've started doing that recently. Game changer. Because we get so addicted to like our morning routine of like journal and meditation and yada yada, which is all fine. But like every once in a while, I'll do those things still pretty regularly. But every once in a while, when I just like am kind of excited to get to work about what I'm going to do, I'll roll out of bed and get straight into it.
No coffee?
Nothing. Just like right into it, and I'll just like jump right into a flow state, and then maybe I'll grab a cup of coffee in like an hour or something. But I can jump right into it, like right out of bed.
Dude.
Total life hack.
I want to talk to you about this after.
Yeah. Corey Camp, dude, I had a great conversation with him. What's your favorite app or resource right now?
I think that YouTube has become very adept at finding out what I'm interested in and serves me really cool content. Like I've been watching a lot of Alex Hormozi videos right now. The man's
He's
genius.
a goat. Yeah.
He's a goat. So all of that, inspirational, Brian Tracy, Alex Hormozi these days.
I think you already answered this question earlier, but when were you the happiest? I think you were saying it was back home in India, right?
High school, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just fun, man. No responsibilities, no need to make money, women loving you, Life was good.
At least you thought they did anyway.
I thought they did. Life was good.
What's your favorite part about Austin? And you can't say the people.
Totally. I think Austin has the things that I'm most interested in are e-commerce, marketing, business, and self-development, right? Austin has spades of all of those all around you. They're like within an arm's reach. So not the people per se, but the knowledge that's here is wild.
Dude, and the ambition. People are just so excited about what they're doing here. I have one last question for you. Before I ask that question, though, I just want to acknowledge you, man. Like, for deciding to finally branch off and do your own thing and follow the things that you're actually genuinely excited about. And it's cool to see you show up on a day in and day out basis of something that, like, yeah, it's hard. There's struggles, there's challenges, but like continuing to pursue it regardless of the outcome, I think is super cool. And I think that you've honestly found a way to just like enjoy the process of like the flow states and doing what you're doing and the podcasting and figuring out better formulas. And I just want to acknowledge that.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
For sure. Before I ask my last question, what's your plug? Where can people find you?
Oh, yeah, totally. So if you're interested in hair wellness, hair growth, go to fullyvital.com. We have 4 products that help stimulate hair follicles in 4 different ways to wake them up and get them going. And then my podcast, you can find at Anti-Aging Hacks. And my Instagram handle is also Anti-Aging Hacks.
Cool. We'll put that all in the show notes. Last question. It's really your best piece of advice for other business owners and entrepreneurs out there. And so like if you were to go back to ground zero or day one of like starting a business, like trying to figure out what you should be doing and just like going through the motions, like what's maybe the best piece of advice you could give to yourself or really anybody else kind of early in their journey of entrepreneurship?
I'd come back to what I just said. I spent decades of my life trying to master a skill without somebody helping me. So get a mentor, pay if you need to, beg them if they'll do it for free, but people want to help. Find somebody that's exactly in your niche. So for example, just real quick, I was in the physical product niche and I found mentors that were doing online courses. It's not the same. Like you learn some marketing skills, but it doesn't apply. So find a person that's exactly in your niche, that's 3 to 4 years ahead, pay them, beg them, whatever, and just follow everything. They do everything they say. Like you will save so much time.
I feel like I could use that advice myself. Cool, man. Thanks for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Hey, friend, thanks for listening to the show. And if you have any feedback for me about the show or any other guests that you'd want to see in the show, definitely shoot me a message. I love engaging with my audience and figuring out how I can provide the best value possible to the people listening to this show. Before you go, I only have one ask of you, and that would be to check out my 3 Tips Tuesday newsletter. It's 3 marketing tips every Tuesday specifically for the health and fitness entrepreneur to help them attract new leads. If you press the link in the description, it'll take you directly to the archive of all my previous newsletters, and you can decide for yourself if it's something for you. If you end up finding it helpful, you can just sign up for the newsletter and you'll get it in your inbox every Tuesday. Thanks again and keep hustling, my friends.